What's the difference between faithfulness and loyalty? I spoke to a person who claimed they were two different things. What are your guys' thoughts?
So then, Robert's given us more of his thinking process and thought process where he's going with it. And again, this is interesting. I appreciate you giving us some more background here, Robert. So he says, like, the reason is that I want to be able to articulate my points whenever I speak to people. They don't know true love. They always say that they prefer loyalty over love because love is just an emotion and loyalty is just a character trait. I had people with a worldly philosophy who try to separate loyalty, faith, love, and respect from each other. And I want to understand each to articulate it to others and to bring them to Christ.
And you should. The question that we
Mhm.
answered last time was about the difference between loyalty, love, and respect.
I think that's right. Okay, so difference between loyalty and faithfulness now. So loyalty, I think a good example of that people often think of, right, is the dog. And what you've been saying here, I think, is generally correct. So like the dog is going to be loyal. He's always going to be at your side. He's always on your team. That's kind of what loyalty is. They sort of have a very strong sense of allegiance to a person or a side. But faithfulness usually involves someone who is making a promise and then they fulfill that promise. They live up to that promise. Example, like David and Jonathan had these oaths that they swore to each other. And people always talk about the relationship because of how faithful they were to one another, to their relationships, to their oaths, to love each other, to take care of each other, do things for each other under tough circumstances. So that's where there's this difference between them. So yeah, a dog is capable of being loyal. It's a noble trait, is a good thing, but faithfulness usually involves a greater level of of or involves more because you're making promises and you're having to keep them. So for us, God wants us to be faithful. He wants us to promise that we'll love him, that we'll keep his commandments, and then he works with us to help us be faithful, to help us keep his commandments and not just be on his side.
So faithfulness is kind of like an advanced or a level up from loyalty.
I suppose that's one way to. It's possible there might be some spectrum where, yeah, loyalty is on one end of it and faithfulness is on another part of
You
it.
can't really have faithfulness without loyalty, right?
I don't know. I mean, I suppose you could have, in theory, people who are enemies, but you could enter a treaty and you could still be faithful to the treaty.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting.
That's kind of a tricky one. Like when you're defining terms like that, faithfulness and loyalty. Because I mean, yeah, in a sense, it's like you can't really be faithful unless you're loyal. But I guess faithful is just more like keeping a promise, whereas loyal is almost like a sense of duty. But it's, to me, loyalty seems a little bit more inward rather than faithfulness, which is more outward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it all depends because faithfulness could be a reflection of something inward. Like in the case of David and Jonathan, we're told
Very
that
true.
they loved one another, and that was what helped manifest their oath to one another in their faithfulness.
That's true. That is true.
So I appreciate, Robert, how you're saying these things are connected and they get bundled together. And these are all traits that go with love.
Yeah, they are components of love for sure. I would say faithfulness also has more of a spiritual component to it than what loyalty does. Just by nature of it being faithfulness. It's really a I see it as something that has to be aligned to really like God's kind of God's call on the situation, or God, like to me it has a greater godly significance to it than what loyalty alone has.
And And by the way, Robert, you said that some people want to say that love is just an emotion, and I hope we make clear on Bible Lesson when we always talk about love that it's way beyond an emotion. Love is, especially the biblical love, when we talk about this agape love, it is a complete state of being where you are putting the interests of others first ahead of you. So like loyalty, you are putting a cause or a person before your own interests. In fact, as a lawyer, I would litigate a lot of cases against directors and officers of corporations for breaching their duty of loyalty. And the basis for it would often be that they were putting their own interests, they were caring for themselves more than they were caring about the corporation of which they were an officer or director of. So I think that gets to very much to the heart of what love is about, again, which is it's this putting the interests of others before yourself, being willing to sacrifice for them. And that was ultimately manifested by Christ, right? Where he gave up everything, his status in heaven, his life, all these things because of his love for us. And it wasn't just because he had an emotion towards us.
Right. That's powerful. That's deep.